49ers insider it is, but I think of him as
boots on the ground, they used to say.
That's too limiting, though. That's too limiting of a description for what you do. Because you do more than that.
I agree.
All right.
I would agree. You're right.
All right.
So, for the last 5 years doing the Warrior. You want my resume? You want to be my agent?
I love you, Jay.
I tell you what, I could make something happen. I think I could. JD.
Okay.
You just did, not my household.
Let's talk about practice today. And I mean, let me ask you this, because you've been covering this for a while. My first question is going to be about the quarterback situation and who did what today. As somebody who's covered this team for years and every day this year, do you think it's getting too much attention? And if so, what are we kind of missing? You know what I mean? Or is it the overriding issue, no doubt about it?
I don't think it's getting too much attention because the 49ers themselves have stated, and it starts with Kyle Shanahan, that there is a competition. And it's a competition, as we've talked about a lot and did last week, for the 2 spot. I think it's becoming more and more clear as this camp has gone on, and there are now 6 practices in, the last 2 in pads. I think it's really more of a competition for the 2 and the 3 spots. It's in essence 3 quarterbacks for 2 spots. Brock Purdy is the one. He's in his own separate category, and then it becomes Trey Lance and Sam Darnold and Brandon Allen for 3 players for those 2 spots. And so that's really important given where things have ended up for the 49ers over these years where they've had to have 3 quarterbacks and last year had to have 4. So short answer, no, I don't think it's getting too much attention, but let's not overanalyze each individual rep to a point where you're creating maybe other controversies that aren't really there.
Wow, Jay, that was well said. Jay, I was out yesterday, as you know, and I come in today. Steiny and I have a great pre-show meeting, and our conversation just went left, and it was a natural went left. And my whole thing was, and I'm going to ask you point blank range, do you think Kyle Shanahan's opinion of Trey has waned, like his confidence level, because everything is adding up to that? But I almost like, Jay, just come out and say it, because I'm reading left and right that forget starting. I understand he's not getting that, but there's people out here actually writing and talking that this kid, Trey Lance, may not even be on the roster. Do you think that's in play?
I do think it's in play, but the reality is Trey Lance has been, through the first week plus here, one of the best 3 quarterbacks. So if it's a true competition of the best 3 quarterbacks are gonna get the top 3 spots, then to me, Trey would be safe and on the team come week 1 if that's what it's about, because he's been better than Brandon Allen. Now, Brandon Allen, I do think, had his best day of the 6 today. But make no mistake, Trey Lance has been significantly better than Brandon Allen, and I think it's been pretty close between he and Darnold. I've got Darnold edging out Lance at this point through these 6 practices, but I personally would keep Trey Lance if he's among the best 3 quarterbacks, even if he's the 3. The question becomes, though, if Trey is the 3 at the end of training camp, if the 49ers decide, all right, Brock won, Darnold won the backup competition over Trey, is it worth having Trey Lance on the team as the 3rd quarterback versus looking to try and make some kind of a trade that puts him in a better position to succeed, that maybe allows the 49ers to get something back in return for him? And then does the 49er coaching staff, led by Kyle Shanahan, look at Brandon Allen and say, well, he's good enough if he's the 3 to where we'll just keep him, and he's not making $9 million to be the 3. I mean, the 49ers rather would have this weird inverted quarterback room in terms of the salaries, where the starter's making around $900,000, the backup making 4.5, and then the 3rd string making about 9. So that if they think that's weird, then maybe that comes into play. So I think all of these things are factors. But the reality for me here through the first week is, I would want Trey's talent, and I do think he's gotten better. I would want that talent on the roster because here's how I look at it, and I'll be quick with this point. If you wind up needing if Trey's the 3 and the 49ers wind up needing a third-string quarterback this year, well, you might as well use that as an opportunity to develop because his upside is so dramatically better at that point than a guy like Brandon Allen's would be, to where you should, if you're going to the 3 anyway, Brandon Allen you're not winning a Super Bowl with. So Trey Lance, you might as well see what you've got. Let him get those opportunities. If the first 2 quarterbacks get injured or something happens, let him get those opportunities and see what he's got, to where maybe he's good enough to be moved next offseason, or maybe somebody wants him at the deadline, if this happens early on in the season. Like to me, I'd rather see what I've got at that point if you're not winning it with a third quarterback anyway. And you may find out that Trey is farther along than you think at this point, at least this first weekend of practice.
John Dickinson joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's our 49ers insider. He's in Santa Clara where he's been all training camp. Is it let's talk about what we can rule out. Can we rule out Trey Lance on the practice squad?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Tell people why that would be the case.
He would get picked up. Somebody, if Trey Lance would, they'd have to cut him first, so somebody could pick him up via waivers. Now they'd have to have the ability to take on his salary at that point to do it. But to me, there's too much talent to where if the entire league had an opportunity to claim Trey Lance, somebody would do it. Now, if he did clear waivers and the 49ers and he wanted to be put on the practice squad and agreed to it, any team could sign him at any point that has a quarterback injury. So let's say the rest of the league didn't want him at that point, but you can sign players off other teams' practice squads as long as you're going to put that player immediately onto your 53-man roster. So to me, that's just not going to happen at this point. If a team wants him, they're probably gonna try to trade for him. Now, then the question becomes, would they be offering enough to where the 49ers would want to part with him if, in fact, he is the 3?
Jay, it's incredible, man. I know there's so many other facets to this team, and, they're loaded everywhere. But every offseason, I always feel like I ask you this question, and here I go, the 2023 version. If I was doing the body contest, Javon Kinlaw, you are the man because you look sculpted. But I'm hearing he's lost some weight. He's looking good. But what have you seen from him, and do you think it can translate to where he can have an impact on this defense finally?
Yeah, I mean, he looks healthy, and I think fewer reps for a guy like Javon Kinlaw, or the expectation of fewer reps for a guy like Javon Kinlaw, helps him. I mean, you bring in Jayvon Hargrave, and Jayvon Hargrave is not somebody that's going to play every single down. But you start looking at a guy like Kinlaw with all the physical attributes, and you take a little bit off of his plate in terms of the demand of being the pick that he was and having the physical tools and also having this degenerative knee condition that was a big part of the reason why teams were iffy on whether they wanted to pick him. The 49ers went in on Kinlaw, and this knee thing has, I think, prevented him from having the career that people would have wanted him to have to this point. But when you start to look at Javon Kinlaw as depth on a really talented defensive line that's probably 10 deep, if the 49ers want to keep that many among the pass rushers and the interior players, then he becomes, I think, a hell of an asset. And I think that's what you're seeing from Kinlaw early in camp. He does look a little bit leaner. He looks a little bit quicker. I mean, his body, I mean, he just looks like a dude when you're walking around at practice and they're doing the one-on-one drills. And we've talked about Nick Bosa in the past. Like, wow, Bosa, like he just has this body type, and the legs are like tree trunks, and like Kinlaw's got a lot of that going on, with the legs and up top. Like he just is he's a dude that looks like he's built to move the guy in front of him and get to the quarterback and or stuff the run. And so, to see him be able to be a little leaner, quicker, maybe take a little bit of weight off that knee, I think has been beneficial. And I think he also has the luxury now, because of the Jayvon Hargrave signing, to not have as great expectations as have been on him these last couple of years, and I think that only benefits him to this point. But he's got to stay healthy.
John Dickinson joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's our 49er insider. That's the guy I want to talk about is Hargrave, because sometimes training camp comes and who have we heard about? Well, Bosa's obviously talked about a lot because of his contract situation. I've heard Drake Jackson's name. How's he going to be opposite Bosa? I know he put 15 pounds on. Kinlaw's name has come up, but Hargrave was their big acquisition in the offseason. Haven't heard much about him. Is that good news, essentially, when we talk about a training camp?
That's
no problem there. No, like he's nothing to like. No. He's himself.
No, he's himself. The one thing that did surprise me about him was he's not as big a guy as he plays. Like, he plays much bigger from watching him play during his career than when he steps up to the podium for his press conference, which he did here a few days ago. I was like, wow, he's a shorter dude. Like, he's just a smaller dude, and so it's all about positioning and leverage and being able to get low, and like he's more of a tactician in that form. I thought he was more just from the way that he plays, more of just a brute strength kind of a guy, not a Kinlaw type, but more but he plays I think a lot bigger than he actually is when you see him up close and in person. But no, that was a go for it move for the 49ers. That was already talented defensive line with maybe some question marks in terms of the pass rush on the outside opposite of Bosa, and a guy who knows, he's been on team. It was just on the Eagles, so he's on a team that was in the Super Bowl, championship aspirations. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like the Charvarius Ward signing when the Niners needed Charvarius. They needed a corner, I think, more than they needed a defensive tackle when they signed Ward. But it's a guy who's been in big playoff games, bright lights, big stage, can just come in, plug and play, do what he does best, take pressure off of everybody else. Because Ward allowed the other corners to settle in to more normal roles. After Richard Sherman was no longer in the mix, I think Hargrave allows some of the other guys to drop down in the pecking order, including Kinlaw, and be more effective among the defensive tackles. And he's somebody that plays at an extremely high level himself and has been through the rigors of trying to contend for a championship.
Jay, you were just in my seat hosting the show with Steinmetz, and he's on fire because he's got this bit about he's having a good year, but I got to tell you, I'm taking the victory lap because Brandon Aiyuk, I believe, is the best receiver on the team. No shade to Debo. They do different things, but when you watch his route running and you talk about tactician, my God, it's special. But I'm hearing a lot of good stuff. It's camp. But can you talk about what you've seen from him? Because if he could take it up a notch, Jay, I think they got something on their hands.
Yeah, this is a big year for Brandon Aiyuk. I think this is a year where he's going to want to put up numbers. He's been the best player at camp for the first week plus. He just flat out on either end of the ball. He's been the best player. He's become, it's funny. It seems like every wide receiver initially, except for maybe Deebo Samuel. Deebo was in the mix and played a lot as a rookie. But a unique type of a wide receiver is Debo. But it seems like every other young wide receiver comes in, gets in the Kyle Shanahan doghouse, has to work his way out of it. But Brandon Aiyuk, not only going back a couple of years ago, has gotten out of the doghouse, and his first year obviously being the COVID year and all of that, but working his way out of the doghouse and into where he's spoken of as one of the hardest working players on the team in terms of just going through his routine and the extra work after and making sure he's prepared and his body is right. And he's just become like a tactician, of somebody that just is honed in on wanting to do everything the right way. And I think that's the part that's so impressive about Not that he needed to be made into that by Kyle Shanahan, but it's something that I can't remember a player that went from, oh wow, like kind of what's going on there, to somebody that everybody talks about as almost an example of how you're supposed to conduct yourself, leading up to practice.
I'm hoping it's Kuminga, Jay. I just thought of Kuminga because
I actually thought of Vernon Davis under Singletary, and then afterward.
That's a good call.
VD.
Kuminga could use some of the last 3 years of Aiyuk.
Yeah, directions. Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, JD, thank you
man.
as always, and hopefully we'll talk to you a lot, actually, in the next few weeks.
Yeah, anytime you want me, fellas. It's all good. Love you guys very much, and just having a good time with that Niner inside.
Hey, Jay,
deal.
I'm gonna leave him with this. Oh, you wanted to?
No, go ahead.
Hey, Jay, who looked the best today as a quarterback?
Among who?
All of them. The quarterbacks.
Today was Purdy's best day among the quarterbacks.
Okay.
This was his best day of practice. They did red zone.
All right.
He had a couple touchdowns in the red zone. Brandon Allen was the best of the other three today, which is the first day we've been able to say that. But
wow.
I mean, and I'll say this: I know you guys are up against it. Brandon Allen has by far been the third best of the other three, or the fourth best overall up until today. So don't make too much of that. This was 1 out of 6 for Brandon Allen as far as maybe being better than the other three.
All right, JD, thanks as always, and we'll talk to you soon, my man.
All right, you got it, fellas.
All right, Guru, you are the piece of work of the century.
My phone is blowing up.